Hey everybody, welcome to another Piece of Ash with Ash. This is my monthly Q&A show where I go through, I look at the questions you guys have asked from the previous month and I answer them as best I can. We tend to talk about wargaming, tabletop stuff, what's going on in the co-op, what's going on with me, and that's really it. So today I'm not at the co-op, I'm actually on location at Lords of War Games and Hobbies in Oakville. I'm filming some stuff for today. Owen might be by later on today too to film some stuff with me. And yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out. So I'm making use of their workspace in the basement to sit and build some models. I am building a Ariadne Spec Ops that I just bought to be a Spetsnaz HMG, because he comes with an HMG. I'm also building a Nice Sniper for my Pan-Oceania army, a hard case with a tack bow that I just picked up, and the new, improved, doesn't have little fins that break off Crocman Sniper to replace my old Crocman Sniper, which I have, but he's a cool new model. He's kind of beefy, so I'm gonna do that. And then I got some stuff to paint. I have 3 Silurids, I have my Hexa, and I have my Squalo, who's been like 80% finished for going on 8 months now, and I've just never actually finished for my Neoterra army that I'll probably get to in a little bit. But I figured what I would do is I would just dive in, start answering questions, and keep working on stuff. So now, if you haven't watched this show before, I take all my questions from SurveyMonkey, and if you want to ask me a question for next month, click the link below in the video description on YouTube and ask me a question on SurveyMonkey. Now, the first come, first serve, I try and go for about an hour. And I get as many questions as I can done in that time. Also, one other thing, it's a little bit echoey in here because we're in a basement. It's big and cavernous. So I apologize if you hear some echo. I'm hoping that my mic doesn't pick it up because I'm on a lapel mic right now. But if it does, my apologies. I'll be back in the co-op next month. So let's do the first one. Vlad asks, can you do an intro game with the Age of Sigmar box set so I can link it to my friends as a how to play video? I've learned to play Warhammer Fantasy thanks to your videos. I would do that, but well, I kind of did do that. I did a walkthrough of the game in episode 1 of Realms of Conflict with Owen, and then that was a walkthrough of like the rules in general. And then I think Steve Mini Wargaming has already done a box set, like play-by-play, where you play through all the videos, or through all the different missions from the rulebook. And I played through the final mission in the rulebook with Chris from Lords of War. I think it's episode 2 of Realms of Conflict. So you know, like it's been done. And it's been done by guys at Mini Wargaming as well. So if you want to check out just every single one, I would go check out their videos. And if you just want to like walk through the game in general, go check the one that me and Owen did. And really all of my Age of Sigmar videos, I kind of explain everything that's happening as it's happening. So you should be able to pick up the game by watching that, if nothing else. So yeah, I'm not gonna do the whole box set again because I did one of the missions and because somebody else already has. So there's not a lot of point in me making content people have already made. Because it's already out there. So, and Steve made it, he knows what he's doing. So, next question. Crownblade asks, hey Ash, will you ever do a full Mordheim campaign? I am doing a full Mordheim campaign. I'm on like episode 7 of the Mordheim stuff on my channel, and it's just an open campaign. So like, it's not gonna have a narrative. Like we're not gonna do because it's an open campaign, because like anybody can come in and play in it. We're not gonna have like an ongoing story. I mean, little stories are gonna evolve as like rivalries sort of come into being and stuff like that, and that just kind of happens in a game like Mordheim. But it's because anybody can come in and play, it doesn't make any sense to do like a this is the story for each player and their faction thing, because games could be so few and far between those individual like factions and armies and stuff that it wouldn't make a lot of sense. But I am doing a full Mordheim campaign. I'm running 4 warbands. so you tend to see games sort of in like few and far between for my warbands, because I try and keep like the warbands interesting in the games between different armies like as I go through. All right, next up. The XC asks, have you ever considered a Roll20.net campaign with Owen and other friends for YouTube? Keep up the good work. I don't know what that is. Is that a D&D campaign? Because if you've watched the show before, you know I never really played D&D. Like I own some books for it, but I didn't ever really play Dungeons & Dragons. But yeah, Owen might do something like that. That's just nothing I've ever heard of. Pacific Rim Job. That's retarded. Asks, how can someone join your co-op? Well, the co-op's basically, like all 3 workbenches are full right now. So really you'd need to live in St. Catharines, be some type of a content producer for tabletop. So either you make videos, you run a painting service, like you make something in the world of tabletop gaming. And we'd have to have a vacancy. But right now there's no vacancies. Owen and Mike have the other 2 workbenches and studio time slots, and that's really it. So yeah, that's that would be it. And you have to be in the Niagara area. Obviously, you have to be local, because if you're not local, there's no point in you having a bench in the co-op or access to studio time. Joe, do you have a setting or piece of lore from a game that you want to see in a movie like The Great Crusade? That's a constant. If you ever work for Games Workshop, I would say every 2 weeks to 2 hours, that debate would come up, like who you would cast in the Horus Heresy movie, and like who would you have be all the Primarchs and stuff like that. That must be one of the most common conversations between Games Workshop staff that I can think of. Do I have a setting or piece of lore from a game that I'd like to see as a movie like The Great Crusade? I don't really. Like, I really like that they're not movies, because I find that movies tend to take intellectual properties and like do a little too much exposition. They fill in the blanks too much. That's one of the things I really liked about the Mad Max movie. I finally saw it, Fury Road. It took me way too long to see it, but that's what having kids does. It didn't bother to explain anything. Like, you just kind of like got dumped into this chase, and that was that. Like, you were now in a chase movie, and you were going to hang on for 2 hours while chasing happened. But a lot of movies don't do that. They kind of slow down. They try and spoon feed it all to the audience, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Like, I like to be able to fill in the gaps myself with my imagination, and so the idea that everything is kind of spelled out for you doesn't do it for me, and that's why I get nervous when movies get made about intellectual properties I'm a big fan of. So, no, not really. I think that here's the thing. My opinion of movies in general, I would much rather Hollywood started making original films again and taking some risks and coming up with their own IPs. I read a great article a little while ago about how something like 75% of movies released last year were based on a book, or they were prequels or sequels to existing IPs or remakes. And that there was very, very few original intellectual property or ideas that came out, especially in like sci-fi and fantasy. They just don't do that. Like, people don't take risks anymore and make anything new. And that's, I think, incredibly sad, because that's the mark of a society that started to like recycle its own ideas because it can't come up with anything better. So yeah, I don't like that very much. I'd like there to be new stuff. Big Ed says, please play Epic Ash, I'm begging you, with some of the old clamshell Emperor Titans. Well, they weren't Emperor Titans, they were Warlord Titans. Love the show. As soon as I can, I'll support you to keep it on the street. Yeah, I'm doing Epic. Like, I'm literally waiting, and I called them out in a video. I think one of these videos, like 2 months ago. I'm waiting for 2 guys to get their Epic stuff done, and they keep saying they're going to. But then they get sidetracked by their games, because their games are cool too, which I don't blame them. Like, there's so much cool stuff out there to get sidetracked on these days. But yeah, no, Epic is coming. Like, I have my scenery, I found it all. I went to the storage unit and dug it all out. I have 2 of my armies dug out. Like, I am ready at any point to play Epic. And it'll be Epic Armageddon. That's actually, I think, I like the cardboard, lots of cardboard Epic games, but I prefer the newer one. Like, I actually like the new one. It's a great blend of the older editions of Epic, but without all the stuff on the table, so there's a lot less cardboard. The only cardboard really is blast markers and some order dice, because that can be important too. But yeah, like, we don't have to have like unit cards and stuff like cluttering up the table, which I was never a huge fan of. So it'll be Epic Armageddon for sure, not Net Epic or anything like that. Skrellorf asks, hi Ash, just painted a lot of Rogue Trader miniatures and found some of them very intriguing. Does the nostalgia of the old miniatures beat the fact that some of them are extremely static and flat? Well, knowing what I do about casting miniatures, I have a lot of time for those older miniatures, because I understand the restrictions that like casting was just under back then. Like, you're trying to cast stuff in a 2-piece mold, you basically had to have flat casts, because undercuts would rip your mold apart. Like, if you had undercuts that were constantly tugging the mold, every time you opened it, you'd be damaging your mold. So I have a lot of fondness for those miniatures. There's the old joke about Blood Bowl players where they only had 3 poses. They had 2 arms up, they had 2 arms down, and they had arm up and arm down, like that. And it was a lot of that was because they were 2D flat casts. They were flat casts so that the mold would open without damaging it, and you could get the miniature out basically while you were making it. So yeah, I love those old miniatures. I think they're fantastic, and especially the ones that were fairly dynamic for their time. Sculptors had to come up with interesting ways to make miniatures dynamic, based on the restrictions they basically had in casting. So yeah, I love those miniatures. I think they're fantastic, and they have a lot of nostalgia for me. Spike asks, do you play Epic Armageddon at all? Which we said use. I already went over this. All will you also be doing bat reps if you play Systems Cheers. Yes, I will be. Again, Epic Armageddon. That's my favorite, I think, edition of the game, because you're not moving a lot of counters around the way you were in the other editions, or using like cards for your formations and detachments. But I would like to at some point play Adeptus Titanicus, because I think it'd be awesome to do just like an all Titan game and go and get some like Beetleback Warlords out and just paint them up and have like a huge Titan battle, because you can only bring a third of your points in Epic Armageddon. That's Titans and Navy, and so it kind of restricts the amount of Titans you can take. But I have a lot of painted Titans, and I would totally go and dig out some of my unbuilt, unpainted plastic Warlord Titans just to paint for that. Sticky Wicked asks, how come you play the old Necromunda? Ever tried Necromunda Community Edition, which is based on the second edition Necromunda? I've looked at it. I've played it briefly. Like I played it when the community, not the Community Edition, but I've played the second edition of Necromunda when it came out in stores. I just prefer the original. Like, for all of its ugly warts, like for how imbalanced it was, and for all of the, you know, sort of like exploitative things you could do with the different gang lists, I don't mind any of that, because it's not a competitive game. Like, if you're playing with people that would exploit the rule set in Necromunda, then you're kind of playing with the wrong people. So I've never really had a problem with it, and I've never really felt the need to fix any of that stuff. I think that even the authors of those games would admit they're not perfect at all by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't feel any need to play a fixed version of the game. And playing the bonus of playing the original version, and I do know that, you know, people could go online and find the Community Edition, is that most people who are Necromunda fans and have kept all their old Necromunda miniatures, for the most part, have access to those rules. They have access to the original version of the rules, or they have access to the second edition of the rules, which are very close to the first edition, but basically got rid of all the counters and cardboard and all of the old templates, because like the old templates were random sizes, and they were the second edition templates as opposed to being the standard template set that Games Workshop's been using for the last like 15 years. So yeah, but I play the original one because, one, I love it. It's the original version of Necromunda that I played. It has tons of, you can dig out tons of like old White Dwarf supplements and articles and stuff that all go along with it, because they just made a ton of supplementary material for the original Necromunda, because it was a huge success and because it was hugely popular, and because the guys in the studio just loved playing it. And yeah, that's why. Like, I just think it's a great game, and warts and all. Like, you just play it because you like the game, not because it's perfect. And so that's why I play that version. Oh, drop my pin place. Mr. J Pegasus asks, or MJ Pegasus asks, hey Ash, loving the content so far. Thank you. Age of Sigmar will be out by now. What are your initial thoughts? I've talked about Age of Sigmar already. I'm super excited about the freedom that I have in Age of Sigmar. And I think my initial thoughts, and what I've said before in my Age of Sigmar videos, is I went to Age of Sigmar with an open mind. I knew, reading the rulebook, like when it was spoilered, it was not going to be Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And so what I tried to do was I tried to really just focus on playing this game, not trying to compare it or use even my fantasy armies. I think that was the initial mistake that Owen and I made when we played that very first Realms of Conflict, was we tried to play it like it was Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And since I've quit trying to do that, I've enjoyed the game immensely, because it's a warband game. It feels a lot like really old Rogue Trader or really old Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where like you're creating a warband, and that warband can have character. And I really don't think we've even seen the whole game yet, because people are still, for the most part, even the guys coming in that have played me who are like super excited about Age of Sigmar, haven't really managed to shift out of the mindset of like, oh, I'm playing an elf army, or I'm playing an ogre army, or whatever. There's nothing in the rules that say that you can't just take whatever you want. So like my Azerian like army, my Azerian like good guy army is going to be Stormcast and ogres and elves and dwarves and just like whatever units I feel like painting, little warbands all like cobbled together in like a unifying color scheme that represent all of these like survivors that have been trapped in Azir, and all the communities that have been trapped in Azir when they like slammed the gates behind themselves when the war against chaos was lost, and are now part of the like military basically there. And so I'm currently painting Iron Guts to match my Stormguard and Stormcast. I'm painting Bulls and a new Tyrant. I got that awesome Avatars of War Ogre Hero Chieftain model that I'm painting. And I'm like super jazzed that I can just go and like paint some Iron Drakes if I want to. So I can add some shooting to my army. I can paint like an Elf Wizard. Like I have all these Swordmasters from Island of Blood that I really want to paint. And so like, I'm gonna paint them now. And I think that's what Age of Sigmar has done for me. Like that's my as a guy who is first and foremost, interested in like the immersion of a game and making my own narrative, Age of Sigmar, like that cosmic fantasy, is really letting me play around with that, and I'm super excited about it. And I'm really excited about the rules because there's something new. I get to wrap my head around them, and it doesn't try and explain everything to you. Like, it doesn't feed you tactics the way that I think old things did. There's no like, hey, pro tip, you would want to, it really leaves it to you to uncover like what something's good at. It feels a lot like playing card games, like a collectible card game like Magic, where the card doesn't tell you how it complements your army. The war scrolls don't tell you how they complement each other. You have to figure that out for yourself. Like, it took me a long time even to realize that things like Rend or Mystic Shield weren't modifying a statistic, they were modifying your dice roll, and how that, even just how that impacts the game. Like the fact that if I stick my bulls with Iron Fists in cover and I put Mystic Shield on them, they cause mortal wounds when they get hit on a 4+ back at the guys attacking them. I was playing a game yesterday where I got attacked by a bunch of Wild Riders, and the Wild Riders attacked me like a gajillion times, like a gajillion hits, and I just literally like cold cocked all of them with Iron Fists because I was in terrain and I had Mystic Shield up. So on a 4+, because they had no Rend, I would just kill a guy, and on a 3+, I would make my save. Because it's not modifying my save, right? In the rules doesn't say your save is what is being added to or subtracted to, it's your dice roll. And that's why the Iron Fist rule says when you roll a 6 or higher, right? So a 6, 7, or 8, which I was capable of doing then because of the +2 to my rolls. I would do mortal wounds back, and it's things like that. And it's realizing that like if something rends me and I don't have any kind of bonuses against me, I don't even get the Iron Fist rule. It's like the entire orc army with choppas, I don't get that way. I think that's really clever, and I really like that it's not spelled out anywhere, and that you need to figure out those sort of like nuances and layers for yourself. Like I enjoy a game that seems, it might seem simple, but like when you actually start playing it, you start realizing that there's a lot more underneath it that just hasn't sort of been like spoon-fed to you that you're trying to figure out. So far, I'm excited about it. I'm certainly like really excited about the collecting and modeling and like warband sort of ness of it all. I'm really enjoying the battle plans, and yeah, and everybody's come to play me with it. Has been really excited too. We've had a great time, so it's been good. No name. Hey Ash, don't think I've ever seen a woman gaming on a channel like yours or mini wargaming. Hardly see them in the hobby stores either. Any thoughts on why or how games and game companies can be more inclusive? It's funny, I've been asked about that one before. I really don't know the answer. Like, I don't think it's a matter of being inclusive. I don't think there's any gaming stores out there that say like no girls allowed, or like you can't be interested in this. I think that there's just a very strong, it's funny because I talked about this with my kid, or not with my kid, but with my wife when we had our kid. There's still a very strong, like in just modern society, sort of like gender typing and gender sort of like gender roles stuff in everything, in television, in clothing. Like I can't go to a kid's clothing store and not see like a boys section, girls section where like there is a huge dichotomy in what the boys and girls clothes look like. Like all the girls clothes are like pinks and purples and mauves, and all the boys clothes are like blues and greens and browns. And it's like it's when I started to notice that, and even in toys, like there's girls' toys and boys' toys, I started realizing how much, even from the time that like boys and girls are little, they get told this is for boys and this is for girls. And so when we started buying toys for my daughter, and even clothes, like she owns like some pink and purple clothes, like some sort of like, socially girly stuff. But I was really passionate about, and I'd have a lot of talks to my wife about the idea that we just bought her toys, and we would buy her very traditional toys that had like no gender typing on them. So we bought her, blocks, and we bought her Lego and stuff that didn't necessarily have like any type of like gender colorization. And it was typically like fairly educational. Like it was about teaching her like, spatial skills and, like how to put something together, like sitting down and building something. That was something I was really sort of like, I thought it was important because I wanted my daughter to be able to choose for herself and not sort of like predetermine her own identities, like her own, like what does she gravitate towards. I want her to like what she likes, not like the things that, sort of society or, the social norm says she should like. And I was really super aware of that. And so I think that's just, what you're talking about doesn't have to do with the culture of wargaming so much. I mean, in some places I'm sure it does. I'm making a very broad statement there. But I think what it has to do with more is just the way that gender roles are already just being assigned in like modern society, right? Like if you look at even when kids are very little, they're having very like gender specific stuff, and parents even kind of buy into that. Like I know a lot of parents that are like, why is your kid wearing, like why is your daughter wearing blue? I'd be like, because her shirt's blue. Like that's the color of the shirt she's wearing. Why are you asking me that question? Like I don't understand. I personally don't understand what's wrong with that, but some people really kind of want to bow to that gender norm, and they feel weirded out when something doesn't sort of like conform to that specific, I guess, gender identity or whatever. But personally, I don't see it. I'm not a big fan of it. Like I'm not a big fan of sort of saying you need to be classified X or Y, and I think that bleeds over into wargaming. It has nothing to do, I think, with the hobby itself. I think it has more to do with the sort of classical definition of what are girl pastimes and boy pastimes, and that's a very handed down ideology that as a parent, I think you need to make a decision on how you feel about it, if you're comfortable with that or not, and then that's really just where you go from. Like I've obviously decided that my kids are gonna like what they like because they like them, not because they're told they're supposed to like them, or this is for boys or this is for girls. So if my daughter wants to have, tea party, like dresses and tea parties and princess stuff, then she totally can. But if she decides that she likes pirate ships and sailboats, then that's what she likes, and it's gonna be the same with my son. If he decides he likes tea parties and dresses and whatever, then I'm totally okay with that because that's what he likes. Like that's his decision and his thought. So I think wargaming is like anything else. I think that if you want your personal wargaming sphere, like your little area of wargaming, to be inclusive, then just be inclusive and say it's for everybody, and challenge people who don't, right? Like if someone is being exclusionary or is having an exclusionary attitude, then point it out and call them on it, because that's the only way that typically that stuff gets addressed, is if somebody is like, dude, what's wrong with you? There's no such thing as girl stuff and boy stuff. There's just stuff, and people like the stuff that they like. Then you're trying to be as inclusionary as possible. But I feel the same way, honestly, even if you just forget gender roles. I feel the same way about like war games too. Like I don't consider myself to be a X or Y type of gamer. I'm building Infinity models right now. That doesn't make me an Infinity gamer, right? Or a Malifaux. Like I don't buy into this whole idea that like, oh, you should play this game because this game's better than every other game. Like it's just, that's bullshit. It's not true. It might be a game that you like more, but that doesn't make it better. There's no such thing as a better or worse game. It's just a game that you have an opinion about and you feel is better for you or worse for you. And it's okay to evangelize that. You can say this is a game I like. And I think I feel very strongly about some of the reactions towards Age of Sigmar as well in that regard. It's okay to say that this is a game I like or don't like. What's not okay in my book is to say, this is a game that I don't like, so you shouldn't like it either. Because then you're imposing, right, your beliefs or your likes and dislikes on other people, and that's just asinine. Like, you can debate something and give your opinion without telling people they're wrong simply because they don't believe the same thing you believe, which gets us into trouble in all kinds of things in life. But generally speaking, I don't have any trouble with. I just think that's stupid. Gekillian says, with all the cool models available with no set games, what games do you play that allow you to use figurines from a wide variety of companies? Well, you guys just saw me play a game called This Is Not a Test, which was a Fallout-inspired post-apocalyptic miniature game. It's a great example of that. We use miniatures from all over, Reaper, Copplestone. We use the official This Is Not a Test miniatures too, but we use tons of different stuff in that game. Even scenery manufacturers, Armor Cast, JR Productions, like tons of different stuff from tons of different companies, and it's a great example of that kind of game. Mordheim, there's no official miniatures being produced from Mordheim anywhere anymore, and if you want to go buy official miniatures from Mordheim that were made for Mordheim, you're going to have to go on eBay and sell a couple pints of your blood probably before you're really able to buy anything. That stuff ain't cheap anymore, but there's a gajillion manufacturers, Heresy, Hassle-Free, hell, like every Reaper, like fantasy miniature, Freebooter, like there's a gajillion different companies that make fantastic fantasy figures that you can just go and play with from Mordheim. I'm really excited for an indie game right now called Frostgrave that has it's actually the guys that sculpted the original Mercenaries for Mordheim, the Perry brothers. they've sculpted a 20-man box of Frostgrave soldiers. And Frostgrave is, if you imagine Mordheim, but set in Skyrim. So it's like this ancient frozen city where all these wizards are trying to like rush to collect the most like wizardy loot that they possibly can. That's Frostgrave. But again, you can use any miniatures you want. So I'm probably gonna go buy that soldiers box, but then for like my wizards and stuff, I'll go and hit up every cool fantasy miniature manufacturer I can find and find something that I think is really cool. So there's that. There's a great miniature that's on my list of like games to get to for my indie game spotlight called Pulp Alley. And Pulp Alley is just this great like heroes and adventurers rule set where you can go and basically make any kind of adventure that you want to have happen. So you could have it be set on like some kind of mysterious island. You could have it be in the science fiction universe. You could have it be set in modern day. Like it's just a great, I've seen a guy, there's a fantastic artist who does his blog is called Shoeboxes something. He's called Shoebox on WordPress. And he does a all Rogue Trader miniature Rogue Trader, but using the rules from Pulp Alley. Paul, if you see this or listen to this or happen to watch my channel, man, you do great work and you're inspiring in your ability to just grind out paint jobs. But he uses his rules for Rogue Trader games, or those rules for Rogue Trader games. And they're just a great open-ended set. There's a game system I never got to play, but I was really excited about like when I first found it, and it's on my blog called MEST, which stands for Matter, Energy, Space, and Time. And it's again like an open source rule system that uses like a cool exploding dice kind of mechanic, and you could use any miniatures you want. You could use it for any setting, like everything from like sci-fi to post-apocalypse. And yeah, there's just tons of them out there. Like if you really want to find like great either for this genre or this setting rule sets or just like generic rule sets, go check out the Lit Adventure forum. I pimp them all the time, but it is the only miniature forum that I actually like really enjoy going on, because I feel like it's the most miniature, like the most sort of like me group of gamers that are out there. Like those guys, they make miniatures because they feel like making miniatures. They find rule sets to go with the miniatures that they like. They do it because they love doing it. And if you go on there and ask like, hey, I've got these miniatures that I'd like to find a game for, I guarantee you somebody on the Lit Adventure forum will be able to go, oh, you just want to play this game. Or like, oh, you want to play that game. And there'll be games that I haven't even heard of yet that are out there that, you know, people are playing that are just super awesome. And you could play with like any models and you know, adapt to like the setting or the story you're trying to tell. Again, no name. Did you hear about One Page Rules? Have you tried their games? Any chance you might cover them on your channel? onepagerules.wordpress.com. Yeah, I have heard about them. Justin at Mini Wargaming, he's the admin guy that is responsible for way more stuff than you would possibly believe, and in my opinion, keeps that place running on time. He was super excited about One Page Rules, actually. He was actually repainting his Celestial Lions army when the One Page 40K rules came out. And I've seen them. They're kind of neat. The only thing that I have about One Page Rules is I would totally feature their like generic rule set for like I think Indie Game Spotlight, but I don't think I would bother with like the ones that are just basically One Page 40K or One Page fan. Like if it's a game that already exists that they're basically streamlining the rules for, well, that game's already out there, you know. So like I don't need to show that off. But their core mechanic I think is neat, and then I would take like whatever miniatures I like and showcase the rules that way. And it's definitely on my list. Because I've seen a whole bunch about them, and I think they put a ton of work. The art is really cool and like cheeky, and it's just a nice, simple, streamlined system. It's exactly the kind of like rule sets that I like, which are just basically like, hey, this rule book fits on a cigarette pack. Like we could write this in the back of a napkin, and you know, it's rules light, but then you insert narrative or genre there, which might be one of the things I like about Age of Sigmar actually, is that it has a nice, simple core mechanic, but the layers come from all the war scrolls and the additional stuff that you add onto it. But yeah, no, I've seen it, and I'll probably get to it at some point. So many great games out there. Corey asks if you could hike through the PCT or the AT, which would be. So these of you guys who don't know, one of my other hobbies is backpacking, and the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail are two of the three big North American trails. The third one's the Continental Divide Trail, that are the Triple Crown of like long distance hiking. I don't know which one I would do. I actually don't think I would do any of them. I've already section hiked all three. Like I've been on sections of all three, which is I didn't take 6 months off and go from point to point on any of them because I have a job and kids, and unfortunately it's just not the point of my life that I'm at. I hope to do that someday. But I have like just gone to like nice sections of them and just hiked, you know, for like 4 or 5 days or a week or whatever. So I don't know that I would do either. If I can go back and section hike something again, I don't even know. I'd probably go somewhere new. Like, I really like going new places, so I don't know that I would go back unless I was going to do the whole thing. I would probably do the Pacific Crest Trail first over the Appalachian Trail, and I'd do it northbound from Mexico to Canada, just because I think that that's an interesting trail, and it offers a ton of like diverse like ecological systems that you hike through, whereas the ecology of the Appalachian Trail is fairly consistent from Georgia. It definitely changed when you get to Maine, you get to the north end, but like they call it the endless spring, because basically you're starting in spring in Georgia, which is pretty early in the year, right, in April. And in April in like the northern parts of the Appalachian Trail, it's still really cold and there's snow, but you're basically following the warming as it hits summertime. So as you're hiking north in the Appalachian Trail, you're in kind of almost the same climate the whole way. Like, it starts to get warmer as you get further north and you get into the middle of the summer, and it can be like miserable hot towards the last 2/3 of it. But it's not as diverse as going from like desert to like Pacific Northwest rainforest like you do on the Pacific Crest Trail, which I just think is it's an amazing thing to go from like the Mojave or the Sierras, and then you get up into like, you know, the Cascades, and it's just this completely different world of like green and constant, you know, humidity and stuff like that. So probably I would do the Pacific Crest Trail. I, for one, welcome our new Age of Sigmar Overlords asks, what is the most cost-effective miniature game, models, rules, terrain, etc., because my friends are cheap bastards? Chess. Not making it up. Or Go. You can play with rocks in a 19 by 19 box. How can I say this without sounding like an asshole? If they're cheap bastards, they don't want to play miniature games. You don't play miniature games because you are a cheap bastard. And I mean, your words, not mine. But like, you play them because you like miniatures, and there's something about playing an immersive game with models that you think is cool. If they're not into it, dude, go buy board games to play with them. Like, don't try and fit a square peg into a round hole. This is not a game that's for everybody, and they either like it or they don't like it, or they think it's too expensive or they don't. Anybody who really likes something will never actually, the only reason they'll say it's too expensive is because they can't have more of it, not because they don't want to do it completely. And that's usually the big argument against price in this. It's not because you wish, you know, you think it's too expensive. It's because you wish you actually owned more of it, and that you had more money, and that your desire to own models and that your current finances were in some way aligned when they probably aren't. So yeah, dude, like, go buy Descent or some kind of board game with no painting involved. You can line up and drink some beer and play with those guys, where they don't have to own anything or do anything, and they can just show up and roll. Because if they think it's too expensive, then it is to them, right? They have other hobbies that they want to spend their money and their free time on, and trying to get them to do this hobby with you, you're fishing in the wrong pond. Natural Loser asks, I want to start a Blood Bowl team. I need to find some miniatures that aren't a team for orcs or something I can convert. Any thoughts? Just go to Black Scorpion. They have an awesome orc team, or Impact Miniatures. Like, there's a ton of companies out there that make orc teams that you could just go buy. If you don't want to do that, then just buy the Orc Boys box from GW and cut all their weapons off and make them into Blood Bowl players. Like, it's that simple. Get a couple Black Orcs, get a couple regular Orc Boys, cut their weapons off, and you have an Orc team. And then likewise with Goblins, just go buy a box of Goblins, or like, you know, a tiny little thing of Goblins, and you have Orcs. People have been doing that since Blood Bowl was a thing, really, is just buying a box of Orc Boys, and now you have a team of players. And a single troll if you can find one still. No Name asks, what Saga army do I have? Oh, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. It's like Yorm's Vikings. It's the elite Viking one, so the one where I didn't need to have a gajillion models to play a game that's supposedly only like 6 or 8 points. So, Saga's deceptive. It's a skirmish game by historical standards, but that means it's a skirmish game by like the definition of like Napoleonic games, where you need like 100,000 6mm miniatures, and you want to paint all those. So it has still a fairly high model count. I think an average like 4 or 5 point Saga game could run you into like 30, 40, 50 miniatures. So I did Yorm's Vikings or Yarm's Vikings or whatever, because it was the lowest model count, most elite. Didn't have a lot of levy in it army list for Saga. And it's all assembled, and about a third of it's painted, and it's sitting in a carrying case. And that's where it still remains. Ty asks, do you think something has been lost in the art of creating scenery with plastic and MDF available now? I kind of miss the old days of all scratch built, more personalized stuff. I was just thinking about that the other day, actually, Ty, because Benjamin Galbraith, the guy that did all the Mordheim scenery, he does Homebrewed Worlds. You can go to their Facebook page. It's actually linked on mine. He's the one that donated a bunch of the scenery that we used for Mordheim. And I was thinking as I was playing games on it, how much I enjoyed how like crazy and ramshackle and fitting it was, because it felt like a 90s Mordheim board, not like the Mordheim board I made at Mini Wargaming, where everything was fairly uniform because I was using plastic and MDF kits for it all. And I really enjoyed that. There was something kind of old school about it. And yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a real, like, I don't say it's a lost art, but like there's a real difference in how it feels to play on scenery like that compared to how it feels to play on the scenery of today. I think in some games, it's just like almost a necessity. Like I really enjoy all the MDF stuff for Infinity because it feels high tech, like it feels techy. And I don't mind that about it. But for games like Mordheim or like Necromunda, because I'm looking at MDF scenery right now because I really want to play Necromunda for Throwback Thursday, but I don't have proper Necromunda scenery like gantries and walkways. And there's a company called Wargames Tournaments that makes it, but unfortunately, like the Canadian dollar is just crap right now, and it's like $250, $300 for me to get a table's worth of the scenery, and then I could just paint it up and have it on a table. But like we can't afford it right now. My finances aren't in a place where we can go and buy some scenery for Necromunda, and that's really the thing holding me back from doing Necromunda. But looking at it, I keep thinking to myself like, well, maybe I could, like, it'll take a lot more time, but maybe I could find bulkheads and maybe I could just make Necromunda scenery the way it was made before. And it's like, I'm kind of torn now because having played on the stuff that Ben sent and feeling like, whoa, this is so 90s. Like we have this awesome like 90s scenery collection for Mordheim. I almost wish we could do that for Necromunda because all of my favorite like, you know, Necromunda pictures and photographs are all of that studio stuff from the 90s, which is all kit bashed out of like old cereal boxes and those plastic girders that you just had a gajillion of back then because they came in the box set. So I don't know, but it's definitely on my mind right now because, like, you know, I'd like to do some Necromunda stuff and we don't have Necromunda scenery that I feel is appropriate for Necromunda. We'd be playing on like our extra This Is Not a Test scenery, which I just don't think feels the same. The Slayer Reincarnated asks, have you ever played Lord of the Rings Hobbit strategy battle game? Why do you think that system has been failing? I don't think it's been failing. It did incredibly well for Games Workshop for an incredibly long time, but you're talking about people that weren't wargamers first. They were Lord of the Rings fans first. So this actually dovetails back into the conversation I had a minute ago about the idea of you know, people liking something. Like, how do I get my friends to play this miniature game? Well, these people were all Lord of the Rings fans before they were likely wargaming fans. Now, again, that's a universal statement. I don't mean to be that black and white, because I'm sure there are people who enjoyed miniature games before that game came out that found that game and enjoyed that game too. But my experience talking to the people that were buying it in stores when it was first coming out was that they were huge Lord of the Rings fans. These are people that would like go to Lord of the Rings conventions, and you know, they already owned like a one-to-one replica of Sting or you know, whatever it was. And they bought the miniatures because they were Tolkien fans, not because they were wargaming fans. And the other struggle for that is that the universe is all painted in. Like Tolkien only wrote so much stuff, so there's only so much like wiggle room and play that you can do to create your own stuff in Lord of the Rings. And of course, Games Workshop was operating under a license, so even they had like restrictions as to what can you do, what can you even make. You have to get everything approved, and so it came to a point where you'd basically done everything, and so it didn't fail. It just ended, just like the movies ended, right? The popularity of Lord of the Rings at the time was seeing a resurgence because these films were coming out, and so they sold really well, and Games Workshop made a lot of money off of Lord of the Rings, but they didn't, the core fans are not wargaming fans, they are Lord of the Rings fans. So they bought all the stuff they wanted, and they never, you know, came in and played in tournaments or joined the community, because they're already part of a community. They're part of the Lord of the Rings community, right? They're not part of the miniature wargaming community. And so to people that are just, you know, miniature wargamers or you know, fans of Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000, it's like they didn't exist because they never saw them anywhere. They didn't cross-pollinate. These two cliques of like enthusiasts and fandoms didn't cross paths. And I think it's hard for the miniature wargaming side of it to even see these Lord of the Rings fans because they don't operate in the same circles. Like they cross-pollinate a bit, but not the vast bulk of them. And so as stuff stopped coming out, those guys had everything, and the miniature wargaming guys that weren't Lord of the Rings fans weren't buying it, and so it just sort of ended. Like that's what happens when something runs its course. It's the same with I'll be honest, it's the same with every specialist game that ever got produced by Games Workshop. Like, people owned all the stuff they needed to play. So the people who were going to be fans of Mordheim were fans of Mordheim, and they had all their Mordheim stuff. And likewise, the people that were going to be fans of, Necromunda or whatever. And don't get me wrong, it's not good games. It's that the people that were attracted to them had all the stuff they needed, and there wasn't anything really left to release. And so they did release a little bit more stuff, but eventually you've just got this additional range of miniatures that's taking up space in your warehouse, in your stock system, in your production line, that people aren't buying any more of, right? It's the same reason why they eventually stopped producing iPhone 5s and start producing iPhone 6s, because it's time to sell somebody something new. But you're not going to sell them a new Frodo. They already own a Frodo. There's not going to be a Frodo 5 and a Frodo 6. They're just going to keep selling the Frodos that they already have until they run them down in stock, and then they'll stop making them. Ethan asks, "Hey Ash, could we all know you have a lot of armies? We all know you have a lot of armies, but we've never seen some of them. Could you consider possibly doing a series where you showcase your armies? Thanks." I'll be honest, man. Like, most of my armies that you haven't seen are still in storage, and I have very limited free time to make videos. Like, hence why I'm spending an hour or so basically filming this while I'm at Lords of War in between games. Is that I do stuff when I have the opportunity to do stuff. You hear me talk about this when it comes to painting. When do you get so much stuff painted? How do you get so much stuff painted? I steal every chance I get to paint. Well, it's the same with recording stuff. It's the same reason why I don't do painting videos with you guys. Like, I paint when I'm recording, I paint when my kids are napping, but like, if I didn't do that, I would have no time to paint. And so filming stuff while I'm painting, like, that's the only relaxation time I have, for one thing. And for another thing, I just don't have time. If I want to maximize the amount I can get painted, I'm not going to set up a camera and do shots. Like, I'm gonna take every minute I have just to pick up a paintbrush and put down some colors. And so likewise, like an army showcase, it's not what you guys want to see me do. You guys want to see a cool game happen. Seeing pictures of my miniatures, you'll get to do eventually when I play games with them. And like, it's a whole bunch of a time investment for me. If I only have 2.5 days a week basically to film 5 days a week in content, where I don't think you guys get the return. So you might see it, like I might do it as I unpack armies to play games with them, but I wouldn't do a series just covering all my armies, because I don't really feel like it's the best. It doesn't get you guys the best content for my time investment, if that makes sense. Jimmy asks, "Hey Ash, as always, great content. Have you seen Microsoft HoloLens E3? Would you incorporate holographic wargaming?" It's so cool. I've played Minecraft for like 5 minutes once, but that like holographic projected Minecraft thing was possible. And the fact that like the girl sitting next to me on her tablet was like walking around in it might have been the coolest video game thing I'd ever seen in my life. I thought that was so neat. Would I incorporate it into miniature wargaming? The only reason I would be in order to do it in virtual presence. Like, I was actually talking about that with a guy who came to play Old World Adventures with me. The guy played Chaos Dwarfs. He and I were talking about how do you do something for miniature wargaming that can be done virtually. So like, how do you set up something where you can play a miniature war game? Because the number one problem I think for people in miniature wargaming is finding opponents, is finding people to share their hobby with. And I hear that as an objection all the time is, well, I don't want to play this game if no one else plays it, or I'm the only guy in my area interested in this game, so why would I buy it? Which to me, obviously I don't share that opinion, because I'm a guy who, first and foremost, my hobby is for me, it's not for anybody else. And so the getting to play a game every now and again is like a reward, whereas the actual enjoyment I'm getting out of the miniatures is the love of the miniatures, is doing what I'm doing right now, which is getting to build them. Well, that's not my favorite part, but getting to build them, putting some paint on them, and then just enjoying them for what they are. Like, my collections of models are things that I take a great deal of pleasure in just seeing lined up on a shelf. And that's not something I worry about having other people enjoy, because again, I'm doing it for me, I'm not doing it for anybody else. And so the HoloLens thing, I think, would solve that problem for some people who see it as an objection, where they could potentially take part in a hobby community remotely. So if you could build and paint an army of models and then log onto a server as if you're going to play Counter-Strike, and then be generated a opponent, or have like your friends list of opponents, where your army is sitting on a table, an empty gaming table, and then it would holographically project the terrain, and then your opponent's army on his empty table somewhere set up, thousands of miles away in another country, another time zone. and then you could play a game against somebody, and it would even project him. That, I think, would be the best use of that, because it would be the next step in bringing together passionate enthusiasts who share an interest from around the world. And I think that would be a great thing. I think that if that could somehow be captured and done, it would be an incredible bonus for people that are passionate about this stuff, but that don't have any kind of outlet for it. Lady Jordan asks, I want to play House Escher. I like the female models, and it's great to have representation for us lady gamers. How many models should I buy? As many as you want. I think most gangs max out at either 16 or 20 members. So there's two arguments there. You either buy, if you're going to buy the Jessica and Escher models, one, they're going to cost you a lot of money because you have to go on eBay to buy them. And two, there's only so many sculpts, so you just collect all the sculpts that existed. Outside of that, what I would typically do when I built gangs was I would have the original model as I saw it, so like the model that I knew they'd be starting the gang as. And if I planned on buying that model equipment, I would model them in their end state. So if I knew my guy with a las gun I was eventually going to try and give a hotshot las gun to, I would have him that way, and then I'd have him with all his extra gear like piled onto him. Some people do it that way. Some people just have the guy, the original model, and just stack gear on him and say he's got it forever. But that's up to you and how much modeling you want to do. So yeah, your mileage may vary. Johnny Boombox asks, why don't you play Terminus 5? Do you hate mini-subs? Oh, Johnny Boombox, I know who you are. And I don't hate mini-subs, but Terminus 5 is an in-joke. I have a friend who used to work for a gaming store / comic book store, who used to just be able to sell me things by getting me excited about them, because he knew that I was gullible and I was easy to get excited. And he had this like giant, thick miniature wargame rulebook for a game called Terminus 5. And the reason he sold it to me was he told me it had mini-subs, and I said yes, and I bought it. And it did indeed have mini-subs, and it was indeed possibly the most complicated miniature wargame of all time. And we never played it, and so it's been this running joke. And I've lugged that Terminus 5 rulebook around the world. It went to Memphis and back with me. I still own it. I will never get rid of Terminus 5. Someday, Nico, you and I will play Terminus 5, and I will have a mini-sub. Valer asks, can you tell your embarrassing doctor story, Ashley? Oh yeah, it's like guys from my past coming onto my show and asking stories. I don't think it's a very complicated story. I have a girl's name. When I was young, I had long hair. I had an injury when I was in track and field when I was like 12 or 13. And I got taken to the clinic to see if I was okay or not. And like, it was like literally like I'd like hurt a rib or something like that. And so I had like this bad like abdominal like pain. And the first question that the doctor asked me was, hey, have you gotten your period yet? And I was like, I'm a guy. End story. My mom thought it was really funny. But yeah, there's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's one of my embarrassing doctor stories. And Blair, I'm not afraid to tell a story to anybody because I am comfortable in who I am. Warlord asks, Ash, why did you leave Games Workshop? Were you downsized, or did you quit or get fired? Well, that's a really personal question, Warlord, but the simple answer is there was a restructure, and my staying in the US was all attached to the job I was doing. And so when the restructure happened, and restructure is basically just like, they create a whole bunch of new positions, and it's like musical chairs. That position was gone. That position didn't exist anymore, and so I came home because my visa was up, and we came back to Canada. And it's as simple as that. So I was 13 years in, and I just had a baby too, so it was kind of good timing. It wasn't really downsized. It was that like all the roles were changing, and the role that I was currently in didn't exist. But that's what my stay in the U.S. was attached to. And so yeah, I came home, and that's that. Matt H asks, what's your least favorite GW miniature that you own? Oh, least favorite. I don't own any of my least favorite GW miniatures, really. I'm trying to think. I don't really know. I think the least favorite GW miniature I've ever built is a cross. It's probably a tie between Shelob and the Red Terror, because those miniatures break your soul because they have so many little tiny metal bits that you try not to attach to them. So yeah, I don't own either of those miniatures anymore, but they're the ones that have nearly broken me. Michael asks, hey Ash, you get asked all the time what your favorite game or army is, so what's your least favorite game and army? I don't exist in a world of ones and zeros and black and white and absolutes. I do make absolute statements sometimes, but they're more hyperbole than they are just, not thinking what I'm saying. I don't have a least favorite game because I have lots of games I don't play very often, or that I wish I played more of, or games that don't do it for me, but like, yeah, I don't work that way. There's games I like, I don't know. There's games and armies I like less than other ones, but like, I don't really, I don't think that way. I guess I'm not wired that way. I couldn't immediately identify with you. I don't have anything I hate. Does that make sense? Like, or that I even identify as liking less than something else. Like, my brain isn't wired that way to think of it. And so nothing pops into my head. Like, you guys ask me these questions, what's your favorite, what's your least favorite? And like, there's no like predetermined answer for me to pop up. And so I just sit here and I fucking ramble. Because like, I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know what my least favorite gamer army is. There's no game that I like or dislike more at the moment. I'll be honest, I'm a bit bored with 40K. Like, but it's probably just because I'm playing with older armies. Not that I dislike 40K, I just find that it's all just the same game over and over, but like that could just be me. Perry asks, hey Ash, I find it interesting that you haven't created your own forum yet to cultivate a community. Is there a business reason behind doing it? No, except there's lots of big forums. Like, why would I create my own forum? There's tons of forums out there already that are huge and have tons of success. Like, I'm not in the forum business, I guess. Like, I don't have any reason to try and do that. I have a Facebook page, which is, I guess, a forum. I mean, people post up to my Facebook page all the time and I talk to them. It's the same thing to me. Like, the whole forum culture thing doesn't, I like one forum, it's Light Adventure Forum, and that's really it. But I think that the problem I have with forums is they tend to either be about one thing, and so it doesn't hold my interest. I don't become a member of that forum because it's just about a single game or a single thing. Or they're about categorizing people's interests. So it's like, this forum has a subsection for this game, and this game, and this game, and this game, and this game. So like, I'm not super, there's nothing to draw me back. And that's probably why I like that one forum, Light Adventure Forum, is because that's where there's just anything goes. There's not even like game forums, there's just genres. There's just like, here's a genre, I'm like, let's talk about this potential genre. And they even have like a like no genre forum where it's like random crap goes in here. And it's all very tongue-in-cheek, and I think I just really enjoy that because it's a lot more free form and just like interested in toy soldiers for the sake of toy soldiers than anything else. So yeah, I wouldn't really, I'm not trying to cultivate anything. Like that's the thing, it's like I can see why people would do that because they want to try and bring a community of people together, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm just kind of putting out there what I'm doing and hoping people enjoy it. And if they want to use my Facebook page to do that, then that's super cool. Farkas asks, hi Ash, I'm trying to introduce Warzone Resurrection to other wargamers in my area. Do you have some advice for me? I'm making demo games, articles, and a Facebook group. Thank you. That all sounds like good stuff. I've said it before when I talk about doing it yourself. I talked about this in a machine shop I did a long time ago. Paint your miniatures. Don't show anybody anything until it looks like a real game. If it looks like a pile of unassembled, random gray, prime, dry brush stuff, it's not gonna get anybody's juices going. It's not gonna immerse them and make them excited about, you know, like the idea of doing this themselves. You have to grab their attention. And so if you can get a small sample of what it looks like to play that game in the rule books, like the pictures of people playing the game in the rule book, and you can show that to people, then you're ready to go. That's my advice. Galaxnor7 asks, hey Ash, by the time you answer this, you probably have played Age of Sigmar 3 times. Do you now agree with Owen that every battle will be the same, i.e. boring? Will you be playing 8th edition still? Those are two questions. First question is, no, I don't agree with Owen. I don't think every battle's gonna be the same. I think that statement was a bit of hyperbole. He thinks it's gonna be all the same, but again, if you try and play the game the exact same way, then it will be the same. You're pre-populating the result in your mind. So I think that would have been true for him. And will I be playing 8th edition still? Of course I will. I play every miniature game that I've ever played still. If someone wants to bring in an 8th edition army and play 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy, I will completely play it with them. And I plan on playing it some more still because I love that game and I have tons of armies for it. Like, and that's the thing is I'm not ripping off my square bases and putting everything on round bases. I'm making a new Age of Sigmar army and a new Age of Sigmar collection of miniatures for this game. I don't do that. I don't look at, and I think that right there, that mentality of like, I'm just gonna play with my same old stuff over and over again is why Games Workshop released Age of Sigmar, because they weren't selling anything new. Like people weren't starting the game from scratch. They were just recycling what they already had, and that does not a company in business keep. AJ Reddick asks, what's your opinion of making a Master Engineer in an 8th edition list? I don't take them. They're too expensive for what they do. I just take the Rune of Accuracy or the Rune of Forging. You can get all the runes that would replicate his abilities for way less than he actually costs, and then he can only affect a single machine each turn. So from a purely gaming point of view, I didn't take him. But from a this is cool as shit point of view, I would. And if I was doing some kind of theme game or like sort of narrative thing, I would totally take one. Danny S asks, Kings of War, something to play with. Its second edition is coming out with Warhammer Fantasy 9th edition being such a change. Do you think it will have a look, or have you tried it out? I've looked at the rules. Everything's free. But here's the thing: is if I do a miniature game on the channel, I want to give it as fair a representation of what it actually is as possible. So I would pick a Kings of War army that I liked, build and paint it, and try and find people that had other Kings of War armies. So the struggle is I haven't done that yet, and I have a game that fills the niche of Kings of War, which is Warhammer Fantasy Battle 8th edition. So there's no incentive for me to do that. I'm not a guy that will stop playing a game because a different game came out that happens to use similar models. I will keep playing the game that I play. Now, if I happen to have a bunch of disposable income, but I don't, and there's lots of other cooler, more interesting, and unique games out there to play, I would totally give Kings of War a shot. And like I said, I wouldn't play with my Warhammer Fantasy armies. I'd want to do it with the miniatures that people have produced and put blood, sweat, and tears into making, and show it for what it is, not show it with the, hey, you can still use your fantasy miniatures because we think this is kind of fun thing that they came up with. I don't think that's a good representation of the actual game. Jeff Brown asks, what are you going to bring to settle our tiebreaker? You best be ready for the ruckus. I have not even thought about it yet. I'm not thinking about Fan 40 armies at all right now. I have so many other games, and I'm preparing for Lords of War weekend right now. So yeah, Age of Sigmar is my focus, Jeff. I will bring something. It will likely suck. Eddie asks, do you foresee getting your kids introduced to the hobby? Well, it's inevitable. They're going to get, there's so much hobby stuff in my life, and right now I'm a stay-at-home dad who's effectively generating income by being in the hobby. They see it all the time. I'm sure they'll get introduced to it. But as I talked about earlier, I'm not going to pre-populate the idea that my kids need to be hobbyists or that they should be hobbyists even. If they get interested in it, then I'll totally encourage them in trying it out. If they lose interest in it, I'll be fine with that. I'm a pretty laid-back dad. I don't think that I need to make my kids be interested in things I'm interested in. I've seen parents do that, and it's not always worked out. What tends to happen is they run the other way. If you try and make your kid be a hockey player, he's not gonna be a hockey player. If a kid loves playing hockey, though, encourage him to play hockey. So I don't think that, obviously they will get introduced, but I'm not gonna try and make them into hobbyists. Richard F asks, with the release of Kings of War 2, I already answered that. Adrock, hey Ash, how do you store all your painted and completed armies? Mostly in carrying cases. I have a ton of carrying cases. And I'll usually make a new carrying case for each army. And that's it. And right now I've got, obviously, the display shelves in the co-op with my armies that are kind of out in rotation that I'm playing with that just sort of sit on shelves. DC Denny asks, with someone who has never played Fantasy, would you recommend Age of Sigmar as a starting point to go back to 8th edition? What are you looking for? Are you looking for a ranked up mass combat game, or are you looking for a cosmic fantasy skirmish game? They're not the same game at all. They are different model points, or a different collection of models to enter. You need far more models for Warhammer Fantasy to, I think, get a true sense of the game than you do for Age of Sigmar. And you're getting a very different experience. So I think before you even decide which one is for you, you need to decide, what do I want to get out of this? Am I looking for mass battles, Braveheart style lineup fights, or am I looking for a smaller skirmish game? Fallen Leaves asks, hey Ash, should we continue your older adventure series? Yes, I will. I've already answered that, absolutely. Anyone who wants to play can come in and play that with me. And that was the last question. Oh, good timing. That was 38 questions, and we're at 58 minutes and 35 seconds. That's, bam, done, nailed it. So there we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this last piece of Ash. This is the August piece of Ash. So if you want to ask me a question for September, click them below in the description. You can ask me whatever you want about tabletop wargaming and the co-op and stuff in general. And I will do my best to answer it during my next sort of sit down and do some hobby work moment that I have towards the end of the month. So this is going to go up on Monday the 3rd. Yeah, because it's Saturday the 1st right now, and I'll put it up on Monday. I hope you enjoy watching it. I certainly enjoyed making it. We'll see you for more pieces of Ash and general just insanity coming out on my channel. And until then, guys, I'll play you.